Indonesia, a land of breathtaking nature and rich culture. There are many things Indonesians are proud of. One-of-a-kind photogenic spots spread all over the nation, unique wildlife, magnificent cultural heritage, and the most recent one, the G20 presidency. Indonesia is proud to hold the 2022 G20 presidency. As a multilateral forum connecting the world's major economies, the G20 holds a strategic role in securing global economic growth and stability. Together, the G20 members represent more than 80% of world GDP, 75% of international trade, and 60% of the world population. And 2022 is the year that Indonesia plays a major role in leading the G20 discussions on various global issues. Not an easy task amid a global pandemic that still continues after more than 2 years. Holding the presidency in this unique moment where countries are struggling to bounce back from COVID-19, Indonesia introduces Recover Together, Recover Stronger as the main theme of its presidency. As a step toward an even, sustainable recovery, 6 priority agendas are introduced in the finance track. Exit strategy to support recovery, addressing scarring effect to secure future growth, payment systems in the digital era, sustainable finance, digital financial inclusion, and international taxation. Through these agendas, the Indonesian presidency aims to engage all G20 members and invitees in discussions and deliberations that goes beyond just the interest of advanced economies.
Teman-teman, mohon tetap menjaga protokol kesehatan dengan tetap memakai masker dan menjaga jarak. According to our health protocol, please do not take your mask off and please keep our safe distance. Thank you.
Her Excellency Minister of Finance, Ibu Sri Mulyani Indrawati, His Excellency Governor of Bank Indonesia, Bapak Peri Warjio, colleagues from all the media, both domestic and international, a very good afternoon. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. To begin this press conference, I would like once again to thank all the media for all the news coverage here in Nusa Dua, Bali. I wish you all in a good health. In line with Indonesia's G20 presidency in 2022, entitled Recover Together, Recover Stronger, G20 finance ministers and central bank governors converged in Bali to attend the third Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors, or FMCBG, meeting on 15 to 16 July 2022 and prepare discussions materials for future commitments in the finance track. With the close of the third FMCBG meeting today, we would like to welcome the Finance Minister of the Republic of Indonesia, Her Excellency Ibu Sri Mulyani, and Governor of Bank Indonesia, His Excellency Bapak Peri Warjio, to deliver the key takeaways of the meeting to the media. Without further ado, we would like to invite the Finance Minister of Indonesia, Ibu, followed by the Governor of Bank Indonesia to deliver the key takeaways of the third FMCBG. Please, Ibu.
Thank you. Very good afternoon to all of you, the colleague media. Thank you very much for your patience to cover this press conference. That is the end of the G20 Finance Minister and Central Bank Governor meeting. This is the third meeting under the Indonesia presidency. Our first meeting back in February in Jakarta. The second meeting is in Washington, D.C. last April, and this is our third meeting. We are very thank you to many of the G20 members as well as the international organization as well as Informasi, which has been also providing very strong support to our presidency, especially also in achieving our finance minister and central bank governor agenda meeting during this very particular difficult and challenging time. We are also continue trying to build bridges and communication toward each other so that we are now achieving a progress until the end of this meeting. I would like to use this opportunity to express our highest appreciation, especially to all participants and those who traveling and come down here to Bali, as well as those who participate through virtual, as well as also the support from the international organization, invitees, including in this case the media who covering our almost 1 week events. Although the peak of the meeting itself is in these 2 days, but we actually have a series of very important side event. In the past 2 days, we have a very productive discussion with the shared priority issue, including the first, and this is the most interesting, maybe in this case also quite updating regarding the global economy and risk, in which each country and also international organization expressing the updating review regarding the global economic situation and the increasing risk due to the both geopolitical as well as the inflation and food and energy. We also discuss on the global health issue and then international financial architecture and also financial sector issues. We discuss sustainable finance, infrastructure, and international taxation. On the first session, which is related to the global economy and risk, we covered 2 very important main topics. That is the current global economic situation and its challenges, including the discussion covering the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the war in Ukraine to the global economic prospect. Also, the implication on the global inflation, as well as food and energy security. We also discussing exit strategies and addressing scarring effect as impact of the pandemic. We also recognize that the supply and demand, which is already imbalanced due to the pandemic, has been exacerbated by the current challenges to the disruption coming from geopolitical tension, which is creating also, in this case, a disruption and rising the commodity and energy prices. This condition has triggered an increase in inflation and ultimately threatening food security, especially for vulnerable groups. The G20 in this case reaffirmed our commitment to use all available policy tools to address economic challenges to maintain financial stability and long-term fiscal sustainability. On the issue of the global health, which is one of the most important, especially since the past 2 years of the pandemic, we discussed the establishment of Financial Intermediary Fund, or FIF, for pandemic preparedness, prevention, and responses. FIF is a concrete action to build a global health architecture in pandemic preparedness and response by ensuring adequate, sustainable, coordinated financing for post-pandemic recovery. We still will continue discussing the FIF governance and operating arrangement as the following steps, and hope it will be launched this year. Some G20 members have formally announced to contribute to this FIF, and during this meeting, as well as those who's already make an announcement, which is also including those who actively consider to contribute. Until today, the commitment of approximately $1.28 billion has been secured for the FIF for pandemic PPR. This is also including the contribution from the United States, the European Commission, Germany, Indonesia, Singapore, the United Kingdom, the Wellcome Trust, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and also some other countries which have conveyed their commitment during the third FMCBG meeting, that is the past 2 days, namely Italy, China, and United Arab Emirates, Japan, and Korea. The World Bank, in this case, through their board meeting on June 30th, agreed to continue next step to establish the FIF, and Joint Finance and Health Task Force, or JFHTF, co-chair, which is Indonesia and Italy, will continue working with the FIF founding donors. Also, we will work with World Bank and WHO and other relevant stakeholders to finalize the design of the governance and then also the FIF ahead of its operationalization, as well as developing finance and health coordination arrangement for pandemic PPR financing. On a topic related to the sustainable finance, we underline the critical role of sustainable finance for green, resilient, and inclusive global economic recovery and achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, as well as the Paris Agreement. Discussion on the G20 Sustainable Finance Roadmap has made progress, developing framework for transition finance and improving the credibility of financial institution commitment for the transition toward net zero and scaling up sustainable finance instrument with a focus on improving accessibility and affordability. We also discussed policy levers that incentivize financing and investment that support the transition. Yesterday also marked a very important milestone for Indonesia, where we launched the Indonesia Energy Transition Mechanism, or ETM, country platform. We believe this is a very important momentum to call all members and beyond to deliver our climate financing commitment with tangible and implementable initiative. The Energy Transition Mechanism is an ambitious plan that enables the upgrades of Indonesia energy infrastructure and accelerate the clean energy transition toward net zero emission in a just and affordable manners. On the topic related to the infrastructure, which is we discussed this afternoon, we have discussed quite a range of issues, including quality infrastructure investment indicators, G20 blueprint for scaling up in infratech financing and development, and also developing a framework on how to best leverage private sector participation to scale up sustainable infrastructure investment. We also discussed the future of global infrastructure hub. In this session, finance ministers as well as central banks governor reaffirmed the commitment to revitalizing infrastructure investment in a sustainable, inclusive, accessible, and cost-effective way. The G20 also underlined the importance of public-private sector collaboration, scaling up sustainable infrastructure investment and potential complement investment, including public investment and finance provided by multilateral development banks and developing policy toolkit to mobilize financing mechanism to enhance infrastructure investment in cities as well as regions. The members also endorsed the G20 blueprint for scaling up infratech financing and welcoming the development of global infrastructure hub for long-term future. On a global or international tax package, the presidency, we thank members for their ongoing commitment to implement our historic agreement on the G20 OECD 2 pillars international tax package. On Pillar 1, significant progress has been achieved in elaborating the comprehensive technical rules of the new taxing right for market jurisdiction. On Pillar 2, progress including the finalization of the commentary to model rules to assist countries to bring the global minimum tax into domestic legislation. During this finance minister and central bank governors, we also discussed two other topics, namely tax and development, as well as tax transparency. The G20 members underline the urgency of technical assistance and capacity building, carry out the agreement on the two pillars. Members also support the progress made on implementing internationally agreed tax transparency standard, including regional effort as well as welcoming the signing of Asia Initiative Bali Declaration. This is 11 jurisdictions who signed the Asia Initiative Bali Declaration. The Indonesia G20 presidency has also organized a series of seminars back-to-back with the G20 meetings. That's why we have a full week here in Bali, which is also designed in order for us to be able to provide not only just the seminar activity, but this is also strengthening the message of the Indonesia Finance Minister and Central Bank Governor's finance track agenda. The presidency theme of Recover Together, Recover Stronger has been reflected in many of our side events. The G20 high-level seminar on strengthening global collaboration for tackling food insecurity. This is also one of the very timely discussion in which some ministers, including international organizations like WTO, World Bank, FAO, and IMF, also discussing about strengthening global collaboration for tackling food insecurity. This seminar, the high-level seminar, is joint host by Indonesia and Saudi Arabia, have the goals to addressing the current food and its related challenges as well as potential global collaboration. Under this topic, we expected to understand the perspective and gather up to date data on the current situation to identify data-driven solution. We also need to explore solutions to alleviate market shortages, support agriculture trade and fertilizer market, as well as proposal on how global collaboration could be strengthened to address the food insecurity and its related issue. And then maybe Pak Peri will also explain later on. We also have another high-level seminar on macroeconomic policy mix for stability and economic recovery, in which we also invited many of the very high profile prominent economists as well as finance minister and central bank governor to speak. During this seminar, we discussed the importance of macroeconomic policy mix. Members also discussed that we need to coordinate between policymakers, whether this is monetary policy, fiscal policy, and real sector policies that play a crucial role in economic recovery. I will give time to Pak Peri now to provide also the result of our meeting, the third Finance Minister and Central Bank Governor meeting under the G20 Indonesia Presidency. Pak Peri.
Thank you, Minister Sri Mulyani. Let me just add a number of points which is being discussed in the G20. I will touch upon first on the macroeconomic policy to address the global challenge with rising inflation and slowing global economic growth. Number two, I will touch upon also on the financial sector reform. Number three is about payment, cross-border payment, and number four about strengthening the role of international organization. First, on the macroeconomic, there is a commitment among the G20 member to well-calibrated, well-planned, and well-communicated macroeconomic policy to address the increasing challenge of inflation and slowing down economic growth. First, the response consists of fiscal, monetary, and financial sector reform. On that aspect, Indonesia presidency has developed G20 presidency note on policy setting for exit strategy to support recovery and addressing scarring effect to secure future growth. This note, by drawing together key information on the experience of G20 members in dealing with the pandemic. The note has served as a reference of experience on exit strategy from the policy support measure, as well as on policy instrument to overcome scaring effect due to the COVID-19 pandemic implemented in the G20 economies. Furthermore, G20 central banks remain strongly committed to achieving price stability consistent with the respected mandate. To that end, central banks are closely monitoring the impact of price pressure on inflation expectation and will continue to appropriately calibrate the pace of monetary policy tightening in data-dependent and clearly communicated manner, ensuring that inflation expectations remain well anchored while being mindful to safeguard the recovery and limit cross-country spillover. Central bank independence is crucial in achieving this goal and buttressing monetary policy credibility. In similar vein, on the macroeconomic stability, on G20 commitment also to enhance long-term global financial resilience. In this regard, the G20 will continue to monitor the risk of increasing capital flows volatility, negative spillover, and uneven market condition by taking into account the completed review of the IMF institutional view on capital flows. The continued work on the operationalization of the IMF integrated policy framework, the policy coordination, fiscal, monetary, as well as on the financial sector. And furthermore, also integration and coordination with BIS macro financial stability framework. The G20 has discussed the need to strengthen collective understanding in formulating an appropriate policy mix. This is intended to help countries on how to use multiple tools in concert for macro and financial stability objective. Of course, the exact mixture will depend on the development and the challenge of each respective countries. Second, on the financial sector issues, the G20 continue a commitment to strengthening and safeguarding financial system stability amidst the ongoing challenges of global financial condition. In this aspect, the financial institution already implemented various extraordinary policy to improve their function as intermediary to support the economy. As recovery from the pandemic is underway, the G20 has discussed exit strategy and mitigation of scarring effect in the financial sector, as well as effort to address vulnerabilities in the non-bank financial intermediation, NBFI, which focus on assessing and addressing vulnerability in specific areas that may contribute to liquidity imbalances. In addition, the G20 continue to strengthen the global financial sector through enhancing risk monitoring and through optimizing the benefit of technology and digitalization. In this context, the G20 continue to enhance supervision and regulation of crypto assets, including assessment on risk to financial stability from crypto assets, public awareness of the risk, and emphasizing the urgent need for an adequate regulatory and supervisory framework through international cooperation, recommendation to promote a consistent international approach to unbanked crypto assets, and international work step to develop a global framework, guidance for stablecoin arrangement, which is expected to ensure any stablecoin arrangement observe all relevant principles of the CPMI. G20 also look forward to the Financial Supervisory Work Report on regulatory and supervisory approaches to stablecoin and unbanked crypto asset in October 2022. On the cross-border payment system and central bank digital currency, the G20 has made enhanced cross-border payment as priority to achieve faster, cheaper, more transparent, and more inclusive cross-border payment, as this would develop and deliver widespread benefit for economics worldwide. During Indonesia presidency, the G20 is committed to continue deliberation on payment system in the digital area. Some achievement or progress include G20 roadmap for enhancing cross-border payments for faster, cheaper, safe, and inclusive cross-border payment. As a part of the implementation of the roadmap endorsed in October 2020, the G20 continue its commitment to explore how central bank digital currency could potentially enhance cross-border payment. Cross-border payment and market infrastructure, BIS Innovation Hub, IM World Bank has submitted a report on option for access and interoperability of CBDC for cross-border payment. The macro-financial implication of the central bank digital CBDC also being discussed, as this may be contribute to facilitating cross-border payment while preserving the stability of the international monetary and financial system stability. Apart from the G20 in ASEAN, the ASEAN 5 cross-border payment connectivity, they also showcase of regional implementation of the G20 roadmap for enhancing cross-border payment. The ASEAN 5 Central Bank, which is Bank Indonesia, Bank Negara Malaysia, Monetary Authority of Singapore, Bank of Thailand, and Bangko Sentral of the Philippines, now is working toward a general agreement on payment connectivity among the ASEAN 5. On financial inclusion, digital financial inclusion, G20 and Global Partnership on Financial Inclusion reaches on the report on the financial inclusion framework on harnessing the benefit of digitalization. The digital financial inclusion directed toward more development of the micro and SME, women, youth, and social program. In this aspect, action plan is being also developed, and that will be a reference for member country to move forward on digital, economic, and financial inclusion. Last but not least, there is also discussion on the strengthening of the international organization. On the IMF, there is agreement on SD special drawing right channeling, which is a global initiative under G20, whereby the G20 continue to highlight the importance of strengthening the international financial architecture. In this regard, G20 welcome the pledges amounting to 73 billion US dollar through the voluntary channeling of SDR, and call further pledges to meet the total global ambition of 100 billion US dollar that will be strengthening the global initiative on resilient and sustainable trust, as well as on the IMF program for reducing poverty and also a number of debt problem. On the debt service suspension initiative, continuation its commitment to address debt vulnerability, especially in the low-income countries. The G20 welcome progress achieved, including the establishment of creditor committee for Zambia, and encourage the timely conclusion of the debt treatments for Chad and Ethiopia. G20 also encourage further progress of the implementation of the common framework for debt treatment beyond the DSSI in a timely, orderly, and coordinated manner. On the IMF, there is also agreement on the 16th General Review quota will continue to be underway, which is expected to be completed by 15 December 2023, thereby strengthening the IMF capability for maintaining strong and effective global financial safety net. In closing, both Minister Sri Mulyani and myself continue to work closely on this success of G20, that meeting of finance minister and central bank governors. In addition of the formal meeting, as Minister Sri Mulyani mentioned, there is also series of side event, which is 5 high-level seminar. The two already being mentioned by Minister Sri Mulyani, which is on the food security and health problem, and second on the macro policy mix for stability and growth, and the third will be commenced tomorrow on the monetary and macro-prudential policy for safeguarding monetary and financial stability. And then they will be also on the digital payment system and cross-border payment system. And last but not least, tomorrow will also the 5th series, which is on the digital finance and inclusion. I will turn back to Minister Sri Mulyani.
Terima kasih. Thank you, Pak Perry. Now I would like to open for any question from the media.
If I may, Ibu, So we will start with the first three questions, and then followed by the next three questions. I will start with the colleague from the right side. Please raise your hand, state your name and your institution, and of course your question. Please, gentleman with the blue shirt.
Hello. Hello.
Good afternoon, Pak Ferry and Bu Sri Mulyani. I have two questions, especially with regards to what you have just said. Is it can be counted as a communique for the G20, or if it's not, then why there is no communique, and what are the countries, what are the major sticking points that the G20 members cannot agree? That is my first question, and my second question would be about, is there any discussion led by the US about price caps on Russian oil in the meeting? Thank you.
Can you say your name and institution?
Marcio from the AFP.
Thank you. The second question, please jump in with the, okay, from the center.
Thank you, Excellencies. Rahmat Idris from TVRI World. My first question to Minister Mulyani. Excellency Minister, the food insecurity issue has been added as an additional mission for the ministers and governors of central bank to discuss, to deliberate for the third FMCBG here in Bali. What were some of the most significant outcomes in regard to this additional issues? Did we really find a common ground to amp up food productions, and what are the financial mechanisms to support it? And to Governor Perry, I'd like to get your insights, your takes on the green finance, as we know that it's one of the hottest issues on the table right now. What kind of support from Indonesian government to sort of include the sustainable finance into the blueprint of what you do? Thank you.
Thank you. The third question from the left. Okay, gentleman from the behind.
Check. Hello, my name is Lukman from NHK. I would like to ask about, based on the information of the Japan finance minister, the G7 countries condemn Russia's invasion. How did the other countries stand on this issue, and how did the Russia respond? And the second question is, how did Indonesia, as the chair, close the gap between the Russia and other Western countries? And if I may ask the third question, is during the first opening speech, Ibu Sri Mulyani said the G20 must behave for deserving its reputation. But if there is no communique today, it has been two consecutive meetings. How will Indonesia as a chair deal with this situation? Thank you.
Thank you. Ibu Menteri, from Marcio, from Ahmad Idris, and from Lukman.
Okay, I think the question regarding the communique or the result, I can combine. I don't have to respond one by one. First, I think we are all agree that this G20 meeting has been under Indonesia presidency in 2022 under a very challenging and difficult situation because of the geopolitical tension. So we're fully aware about the context, how we actually conducting and hosting and organizing this meeting. On the one hand, this challenging task is quite overwhelming. On the other hand, we also encourage by all strong support, unanimously, each of the member country, when we talk bilaterally, they are all strongly support Indonesia presidency and the agenda. And they even expressing sympathy with the Indonesia situation, have to manage this situation. Another one is that within this consultation and communication with all G20 members country, we also agreed that we need to continue defense and maintain this G20 as a forum, a global economic cooperation forum, which have a long history to actually as a forum for leaders, as well as especially on the finance tracks, central bank as well as finance ministers to discuss global economic challenges as well as the risk. Third, all members also underline the need to continue maintain this cooperation and the spirit of multilateralism. So Indonesia, focusing on our agenda under the Indonesia presidency, continue communicating that within our presidency we have deliverable. And in fact, we are going to issue the chair summary that describing what is the area that we've already achieved as a good and sound deliverable from this G20. Some is actually has been read or stated by Pak Peri and myself. For example, the joint health as well as finance, which we've already mentioned earlier, in which we agreed to establish FIF. Remember that when President Jokowi make a statement in Rome, when we are receiving this the button of the G20 presidency, President Jokowi emphasizing the need for the world to be able to respond better from the pandemic, including establishing financial intermediary facility. So we've already delivered that, and we receive support from members as well as international organizations, including WHO and World Bank. And even from the last 2 days meeting, we actually even receive more support, not only in terms of the idea, but also contribution, up to $1.28 billion. So that's really an achievement. This is despite the context and the global situation, because G20 also committed for us to be able to continue preparing the world to be able to better respond to the next pandemic situation. So that's the result. That's agreed, that is communicated, and even in this case, a very tangible. Of course, this is not yet over. As I said earlier, we are going to still continue talking about or discussing about the governance, as well as how the policy regarding the financing for supporting the pandemic preparedness, especially for the low as well as developing country. And then we also discuss something that we are all agree on, a sustainable development in this case. Again, the commitment from all members in this case to first continue supporting the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 and Paris Agreement goals of climate change in the form of reducing the CO2 or even net zero emission commitment. Within this context, the discussion is actually converged in terms of how we could increase the leverage, especially from the private sector and financial institution, scaling up sustainable financing instrument, and also the credibility of financial institution. That's really a very good progress. We even discussed with Perry in this case, the recommendation from the FSB regarding how we are going to track OECD, IMF on how this green financing and the credibility of the commitment of financial sector with accountability and credible transparency of the commitment of their financing related to the green financing and net zero transition. We also discussed and also agreed, and this is also a progress on how we are going to help all the members in designing transition mechanism toward net zero. And within that context, Indonesia launching the energy transition mechanism. So that is actually result which is deliverable and agreed by all. On the infrastructure, even more encouraging, because we are discussing, this is one of the most oldest issue which is being discussed under the G20, any presidency from Australia, Japan, Germany, even China, we are all talking about infrastructure up to Saudi and then Italy and then now Indonesia. Within that, again, there is also an agreement, a result, first on supporting the G20 blueprint for scaling up infratech financing and development. We also talking about quality infrastructure investment indicators with the objective of helping all the members country, especially developing country, in order for them to be able to attract more infrastructure investment in their country. We discussed about global infrastructure hub in which that need to be reformed or changed, and there are a couple of countries which strongly support this. So this is really also a very tangible, because it is related to the real problem of many countries, that is how to build infrastructure in a sustainable and good quality way. There is a, as I said, G20 blueprint and global infrastructure hub, and also mobilizing financing mechanism to enhance infrastructure investment in countries, especially in cities and region. So it's a very concrete result and being discussed by central bank as well as the finance minister in order for us to be able to realize this kind of potential and addressing the issue which is very concrete. Another thing which is also the result is on the international tax package. As I mentioned earlier, this is a very, very historical and strong signal. G20, we have already achieved the 2 pillars agreement on a global taxation, pillar 1 and pillar 2. We are now talking about the implementation and leading to the implementation, all the preparation toward this implementation for both pillar 1 and pillar 2. That is also being discussed, being agreed, and also supported by all members country, including we are using the OECD and other international organizations. So that is really something that we could discuss. Now, within this G20, because of the dynamic of the global situation, we proposing to have a seminar on food, and this is jointly with Saudi Arabia. So we have strengthening global collaboration for tackling food insecurity. This is leading to the next question. What is the discussion all about, and what does it mean in terms of the addressing those issues? All finance ministers, we are all agreed that first, this food security or insecurity need a lot of attention and intervention and policy. And that's why we are discussing first of how we are going to improve or correcting the supply disruption. First, trade policy and protectionism, it should be removed in order for us to be able to address or creating or facilitating the flow of this food from the production side or countries to the country which is needed. And that certainly is a very strong signal from all of us. The second one, we also need to alleviate the shortages, including in this case, fertilizer. And from this seminar, we actually collecting what is the initiative which is being proposed by many countries and international organizations. And basically, there are quite a lot of this initiative. So this seminar is collecting all this initiative. We do hope that this is going to be then can be implemented when we are going to deliver this. From seminar, usually we can come up with a recommendation. The recommendation then can be proposed to become an action. And that's including some initiative on how some country or international organization is going to step more in addressing this issue of food insecurity. For example, like the World Bank is going to use their resources to support many countries. IMF, in this case, Pak Peri can say they have the mechanism in place to support, join IMF, World Bank, in this case, to use their financial power to support the countries in need to get, especially if they don't have resource like money to import food when they are in a very difficult position. We are also addressing the issue how can investment can be increased for the food security, whether this is in the form of fertilizer or opening the farming. And this is one which we are trying to then establish the discussion that can identify action needed to correct that. Just like in a joint health and finance, in which we can also come up with a very concrete action, for example, establishing the FIF, we are also thinking to establish the same joint finance and agriculture ministers so that we are going to be able to also come up with a more concrete step or action. So these are all some of the very concrete, and that's why the communication that we are going to issue to share with you in the media is going to be 14 paragraphs. That is the result of this 2 days meeting. Most of the paragraph is actually supported by all members. Only 2 paragraphs which is we describing what is differences. So of course we are actually putting that within the context that on the one hand this is reflecting of all these member view. On the one hand there is still an issue that they cannot reconcile, yet within the context of G20 finance track we are actually focusing on the finance and economy, central bank, fiscal, monetary policy, economy, inflation. But we know that each country have an issue that they are also have the stand which is cannot yet be reconciled. Of course, there are other forum, for example, like UN and others in this case. But because they want to express their view regarding a certain issue, that is, this is in particular related to the war, then that particular statement related to the war reflecting there is still views which is different within the G20. So we just put it there as a expression of position from each country or group of country. But within this communication actually, or we call it the chair summary, most of the paragraph is actually supported or agree and all related to the issue as I mentioned earlier, and also the one that Pak Ferry has already mentioned earlier regarding step in the crypto. Pak Ferry mentioned, we're talking about the IMF quota reform, we talk about the initiative in what is the one that I don't have to repeat what Pak Ferry has already mentioned. So that is maybe what I can explain regarding the result of this meeting. And the second question, no, we are not discussing about the US proposal on the price cap in this forum. So that's different if the US discussing in a more bilateral basis, but in the forum we are not discussing about that. So I'm already answering your question, including Lukman, on this condemnation. As I said, some countries have a view regarding this war, other is different, and that is what we are putting within this summary, is actually reflecting those issue which is not yet reconciled. But majority or most of the issue is actually we are all supporting and agree. And that's why I think this is the best result in which all member country, including also the international organization, they are very much aware that the world need even more and more collaboration, because we also realize that almost all issue, no country, no matter where they are, where their position, how strong, how high, how rich, they cannot solve this problem alone. You talk about what? Food security, you talk about energy security, we talk about climate change, we talk about pandemic, we talk about inflation. These are all still interconnected. So we agree that we need to continue maintain the spirit of collaboration and cooperation and multilateralism. That is strongly viewed, and that is exactly the spirit of this G20, which I think we can be very proud that this is still continued to be maintained until our presidency today. Okay. Pak Perry, want to add?
Well, the question to me is about sustainable financial framework or roadmap. I think Minister Sri Mulyani already eloquently answered, and even the detail. The second, I just want to add that the chair summary consists of 14 paragraphs. 12 paragraphs is agree. So I think you can, the 2 paragraphs reading, of course, there is some disagreement on the war, implication, and how to respond it. I think we will publish the chair summary, and then I think Bu Minister, I think those media, I think will can look into the 14 paragraph after published. After that, I think if there is some more detail elaboration, I think our team will also be able to go into the detail. I think the main result, as I said, we work very hard, Minister Mulyani and myself, and this is the achievement, the substance, the progress is more than expected. So many progress that we have achieved, including that I was already explained on the how dealing the macroeconomic stability, on how financial sector reform, cross-border payment system, financial inclusion, and also progress on green finance. So many progress that already has been. That will be incorporated in the paragraph 3 to the 14 on the chair summary. The 2 paragraphs that Minister Simuri mentioned is about the implication of the war to global economy, as well as also dealing with some of the aspect of the food security and so on. I think if I can add all those and then follow on up, of course, our team can also do the briefing after the publication. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Okay.
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 Thank you so much.
Second round, and then that's it. 2 saja.
Okay, the next 2 questions, please. Please.
Good evening, Minister and Governor. My name is Trian, Investor Daily. Maybe Minister can explain about in yesterday discussion, many delegates raised concern about the growing risk of low-income countries caught in debt trap. What are the concrete result from the G20 resolve this issue, and any new countries ask for debt relief after Chad, Zambia, and Ethiopia, and will Sri Lanka be helped in increasing debt relief? And number 2, will there be any new countries pledging to join the recently launched Asia Initiative? And maybe how much estimate tax revenue from the Asia Initiative? Thank you.
All right, the last question, please. The gentleman from the back.
Okay. Thank you for taking my question. My name is Magdalena from Radio Republic of Indonesia. I just want to ask one question. We know that the main problem of this economic catastrophe is geopolitical tension. Maybe G20 forum cannot take position to stop this tension, but maybe is there any commitment or amongst the G20 countries to take real steps in short term, at least to prevent global inflation from going higher? Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Ibu.
Okay, G20 is the economic premier forum, but this is not a creditor forum. So first, there is a recognition that there is a worrying debt trend, which is especially, we also discuss, for example, like the advanced country monetary policy, which is in order for them to focus on the inflation, it could also have a potential spillover. The spillover effect of their action can be in the form of capital outflow and then also debt problem. So we recognize those problems within the discussion on the global economic situation today. We also mention, especially this is related to the what you call it common framework. This is the framework to discuss or to address the issue of the debt in low-income country. And within this common framework, how the creditor and debtor should and could meet and then negotiate or discuss regarding their debt problem and also the need to restructure. Now, this issue is also being discussed more on the mechanism, that is the framework, and how to make this framework effective to help country in needs. And that's why the discussion is more on in terms of how to communicate this, is really on whether the common framework will become the platform that can be used by country in the debt distress to get a certainty, what you call it, more effective and timely as well as predictable debt restructuring or debt discussion. But again, when a country in situation like a debt which is unsustainable, they have to communicate and they have to negotiate with their creditors. Now, if the number of country which is in a debt problem increase, then this kind of mechanism should be more predictable, timely, because we don't want the situation becoming worse for number of country, and then it can also create another spillover. So that is what we are being discussed in the G20. Of course, within this case, countries who providing a lot of lending, as well as international organizations like IMF, World Bank, they are the one who will be then have to develop more. But G20 urging for all parties to be able to come with a mechanism to address this debt problem, which is now being faced by many countries. 3 countries you already mentioned, but also other which is going to be also in the difficult situation. On the ASEAN initiative, I think this is the exchange of information regarding tax. So I will ask later maybe Pak Suryo and the DJ Tax to provide you with a much more detailed briefing regarding what does it mean for us, because this is not a standalone. This is also related within Indonesia, the whole reform within the DJ Tax that we've already also initiated. So I will ask later, Trian, to have your question to be addressed to Pak Suryo. What is the concrete step that will be taken following this ASEAN initiative. I'm not sure regarding the second question, but what is on this geoeconomic tension? What is the concrete thing? Well, we are the economic premier forum, so we are discussing about the economic aspect of this geopolitical situation, including when we talk about climate change. We are talking on the dimension of the financial and economic side. When we talk about geopolitical or war, we also talk about the implication on the economic and financial side. So on the issue related to the food security, energy security, inflation, that is being discussed. Inflation, Pak Peri, we can discuss that this is also one of the most important issue being discussed by all governor of the central bank in the G20. On the food and energy security, because this is related to the disruption on the supply side, there is a measure on a temporary level, for example, whether the disruption is due to the trade or due to the distribution, then we have to address this issue. If they are related to the non-availability of financing, how the institution like the IMF, World Bank, or other institution like Islamic Development Bank can help this country, or even bilateral initiative. For example, a couple of countries, as I mentioned earlier, Saudi has already pledged $10 billion for this food security. United States also have. So some country is announcing their initiative to address this issue of the food security, but they know that this cannot be done by one country alone. That's why this issue has been now bring to this G20, and we are discussing how we can organize better to make this kind of action effectively addressing those issues. Okay? Thank you so much for all your patience. So I do hope you are still have time to enjoy the Saturday afternoon in Bali. This has been a very long weekend for all of us. So thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam. Thank you again, Bu Menteri dan Pak Gubernur. Thank you.
Ya, foto boleh. Saya masih mau ada satu pengumuman, tapi ini karena tidak ada hubungannya dengan G20, jadi saya akan umumkan. Ya. Dalam bahasa Indonesia sekarang. Alhamdulillah.